We grow a lot of potatoes in our Zone 5 garden, but we don't have enough space or the right storage conditions like a root cellar to store a large potato harvest. So instead of planting all of our potatoes at the same time in spring and harvesting them all at the same time in summer, we use 5 strategies that allow us to have a continuous succession of small harvests starting in late spring and ending in early fall. Harvesting potatoes in a succession of small harvests from late spring to early fall has 2 big advantages over a single large summer harvest. First, we start enjoying potatoes much earlier in the growing season. And second, we don't run the risk of losing a large harvest to spoilage as a result of poor storage conditions. Now let's take a look at the 5 strategies that make this possible. The first strategy for a continuous succession of potato harvests from late spring to early fall is to start planting before the last frost. Gardeners often wait until after the last frost to plant potatoes, but for earlier harvests, you can start planting 3 weeks before the last frost. Potatoes do well in cool weather, and even if plants die back from a frost, they'll usually recover and produce just fine. Planting early is especially important if you have very hot summers. Potato tubers don't form as readily when the soil temperature is above 80 Fahrenheit or 27 Celsius, so it's important to give potatoes plenty of time to grow when the soil is still cool. Potatoes can be planted even earlier under cover. This year I planted Yukon Golds and Red Norlands under a single layer of 6 mil plastic in late March, 32 days before our last frost. After the plants emerged, I also covered them with row cover on nights that were well below freezing. We started harvesting these potatoes in early June, which is the earliest we've ever harvested potatoes here in Zone 5. This approach worked so well that I plan to plant them even earlier under cover next year, probably in mid-March. The second strategy is to grow early, mid, and late season potato varieties, or at least early and late season varieties. Different sources categorize these differently, but as a general rule, early season potatoes mature in less than 90 days, mid-season from 90 to 110 days, and late season varieties mature in 110 days or more. Even if you plant early, mid, and late season potato varieties at the same time, their different maturity dates will give you a succession of individual harvests over a couple of months instead of a large single harvest. This reduces the number of potatoes you have to store at any given time and reduces the risk of spoilage. When starting potatoes under cover in March, we went with early season Red Norlands and Yukon Golds for the earliest possible harvest. Later we planted early season Red Golds, mid-season Purple Vikings and Purple Majesties, and late season German Butterball and Purple Peruvian potatoes. We started harvesting the early potatoes in early June. We're harvesting the last of the mid-season potatoes this weekend, and we'll harvest the late season potatoes before our first frost in mid-October. The third strategy for a continuous potato harvest from late spring to early fall is succession planting. The goal here is to have successive plantings and harvests of potato varieties that have similar maturity dates. For example, rather than plant all of our early potatoes at the same time, we planted Yukon Gold and Red Norlands in March, but waited until early May to plant Red Golds. This way all of our early potatoes weren't ready for harvest at the same time. We succession planted our mid-season potato varieties as well. We planted Purple Vikings in early April and Purple Majesties in early May. One thing to remember when succession planting is that potatoes grow best when the soil temperature is below 80 degrees Fahrenheit or 27 Celsius. So it's important to plant early enough in the season to allow tubers to develop before the soil is warmer than 80 degrees. In our case, we didn't plant later than May. But what happens when we run out of potatoes between harvests? That brings us to our fourth strategy, harvesting new potatoes. New potatoes are potatoes that are harvested early after the plants flower, but before they die back. All we do is feel around the soil surface for lumps that might be potatoes. When we find them, we harvest just enough for a meal, without pulling up the plant or disturbing the other potatoes, which are allowed to continue growing to maturity. This strategy gives us fresh potatoes for meals when we run out between complete harvests. Our fifth strategy for harvesting a continuous succession of potatoes is to grow in grow bags. Though we prefer to grow potatoes in raised beds because they do better there, we just don't have enough room to grow all of the potatoes we want to grow. But by adding grow bags to the mix, we're able to grow enough that we can keep in potatoes from late spring to early fall. This year we grew Purple Majesty and Red Gold potatoes in grow bags. Though we get better yields in raised beds, grow bags fill in some gaps in our harvest and make it possible to keep the continuous harvest going. I hope this video gave you some ideas on how you can grow more potatoes even if you don't have adequate storage space or conditions for them. As I mentioned earlier, potatoes grow best when the soil temperature is below 80 degrees Fahrenheit or 27 Celsius. If your summers are a lot hotter than ours are here in Zone 5, you may not be able to harvest potatoes from late spring through early fall, but you can still apply these strategies within the limits of your growing season, as determined by soil temperatures and other conditions. As we close, I'll share pictures of some of this year's potato harvests. As you'll see, no individual harvest is very large, but the number of harvests make up for it. If you found this video helpful, please give it a thumbs up. And if you haven't already, please subscribe for more videos on how to grow a lot of food on a little land without spending much or working harder than you have to.